Hey guys, Troy Francis coming at you from New York City on a very beautiful day, beautiful afternoon here. I'm walking down Canal Street. It's a little bit ratchet down here, so I'm going to move on to try and go more into Soho, some of the more upmarket streets, but we'll see where we get to. So what I wanted to talk about now is the discourse on social media and the problematic nature of the discourse on social media, particularly obviously in regard to the dating scene, in regard to sex and game and all that kind of stuff, because that's sort of my wheelhouse, I guess. But I guess this applies more generally as well. So if you look at something like Twitter, for example, now a big problem I think on Twitter is really what you might call the blind leading the blind, because there's a lot of people on Twitter who will chime in on things like, you know, my posts or stuff about dating, stuff about game, all this kind of stuff. They'll chime in, they'll have their opinions, they'll have their views, and you can tell by reading what they say. You can tell immediately, firstly, they're not very intelligent, which is the first thing, you know, kind of there's a lot of low IQ on there. But more importantly than that, they're also not very experienced. They don't really know what they're talking about. And what then unfortunately happens is you start to get these like echo chambers building up of guys who are following people who don't really know what they're talking about, and then they're regurgitating stuff, not really knowing what they're talking about themselves. So it's this echo chamber where information that is flawed in the first place is being passed on by other dudes who are also clueless when it comes to all of this stuff, okay? And I suppose the message really is to vet your sources, but you know, that's, I get it. I mean, that's kind of tricky, particularly if you're, you know, you don't really understand, you know, haven't really come to grips with this stuff yourself yet. I guess it can be difficult. I mean, for me personally, and particularly knowing quite a few of the characters in this space, in this industry, or whatever you want to call it, and knowing some of the backstories of these people and stuff like that, it's pretty easy for me to look at somebody and go, well, this dude, you know, with the greatest respect, this dude doesn't really know what the hell he's on about, you know, and he probably shouldn't really be giving the advice he's giving. But that's me, you know, and I'm in a somewhat, you know, unique, well, not unique, but I'm in a somewhat sort of different position. But I mean, if you're somebody who's coming to information about dating and stuff for the first time and you don't really know what you're looking at, I get it that it's going to be very difficult. And so all I'm saying is you have to proceed with caution, because a lot of this stuff, and here's the other problem as well. Seduction and dating and relationships and female nature and all this kind of thing, it's extremely nuanced, okay? It's extremely nuanced. It's not just this straightforward cookie cutter kind of algorithmic thing. And I think another issue that we have here is, firstly, we have a lot of guys who are very linear in their thinking that come to this stuff. And I mean, I personally will often, and you know, all respect to these dudes, they're hyper intelligent, but I will often, you know, work with guys on a coaching level who are maybe, you know, they're coders or they're data analysts or they are, you know, crypto bros or whatever, and they're super intelligent, like hyper switched on. But the difficulty that we have as far as dating and stuff is concerned is that fundamentally it's not about logic and it's not about facts, it's about emotion, and it's about invoking emotion. And if you can't really get your head around that, then you're going to find it a bit tricky, okay? And so you get these people who are very hyper logical about stuff, and they don't understand, or they don't give the impression of understanding that there are nuances and that one answer to whatever the puzzle is may not fit in all scenarios, okay? I'm trying to now think of an example which is sort of a bit tricky to do on the fly, really, but I mean something like, oh, all women will cheat, okay? For example, you know, women are hypergamous, so if another high-value guy comes along who's better than you, then she's just gonna, you know, kick you to the curb and go and have sex with him instead, because that's just what women do, all right? Now, this, just something very simple like that, has been massively overstated over the years, because obviously, you know, we're talking about individuals with individual proclivities and individual, you know, moral codes and ethical standards and everything else. And the reality of it is, not every woman is going to just see Chad and immediately jump into bed with him. That's just not how it works, okay? And I think that really the message is that, yeah, of course, you know, women want the best possible deal that they can get in the dating marketplace. Why not? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, right? But again, you have to understand, you're not dealing with, women aren't this homogenous group that are all exactly the same. They're programmed like AI robots. They're all individuals. They all have their different, you know, ways of operating. The way that they operate with you is going to be somewhat dependent on the way that you are with them and how she feels about you, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot of complexity. And I think on something like Twitter and also, you know, YouTube as well, it gets sort of like watered down to this very basic level boilerplate kind of thing of like, oh, all women cheat, or they're all hoes, or, you know, whatever. And that's just one example. There's millions of examples of this stuff, or thousands at least of examples of this stuff. But and this is why working with a coach or working with a mentor is really important, because, you know, when I work with guys on a one-on-one level, or even doing online coaching, you start to realize some of the misconceptions that they have sort of fallen into. So for example, we might say something like, oh, you know, you need to sexualize your interactions when you're going on a date, you need to bring that sexual energy into it, etc., etc. Fine, you know, it's a good soundbite, but what does it actually mean? And there are guys who are there like, well, what do you mean? Do I, you know, do I start telling rude jokes? Do I kind of start showing a porn movie on my phone? I mean, what does that actually mean? And we have to really break it down, because I think often the message can get lost. Because by necessity as well, when you're dealing with social media, something like Twitter, I mean, obviously longer form content is a little bit different, but nobody really watches long form content. So you have to break it down into sort of basic sort of sound bites. But the difficulty, as I say, is that people will then have their favorite content creator, you know, the person that they follow. They'll just blindly believe everything that person says, and they'll repeat it ad infinitum and start being very aggressive and very angry at anybody who disagrees, not recognizing that sometimes you have to hold two competing thoughts in your mind at the same time. So it might be that there is some truth in what they believe or what they're saying, but there's equally truth in a conflicting or competing idea as well. And as I say, you know, and this isn't meant to be a huge plug for my services. I mean, there are plenty of people out there who can help you with this stuff, but sometimes actually working one-on-one with somebody, or at least doing some online coaching with somebody, can be super helpful in order to clarify this stuff, okay? Because what you don't want to do is end up following the wrong person, getting into the weeds with a load of nonsense that's not really helpful to you, and ultimately not really improving your situation. Because at root, all of this stuff really should be about making you a better guy and making you have a better life. I mean, that's kind of, for me, what it's all about, really. So be cautious is the message, really. Be cautious and try to vet your sources as best you can. If you want to reach out to me, troy@realtroyfrancis.com. You know, you want to say, well, is this legit? Is this, you know, this seems to make sense, but is this right? Happy to do that. If you want to jump on a call with me, you can do that as well. Again, email me, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, or get on my Calendly below and book a call with me. Grab my books, Renegade Dating Blueprint, collection of 11 books. Subscribe to the fucking channel, and I'll see you guys again very soon. New York City in the heat of the summer. See you later. Troy Francis. Bye-bye.